the message.
Oh, well,
Oh,
I guess we're
live.
live.
Welcome everyone to Ladder Daily Digest. And if nobody can hear me, then we are live now. And so I don't know, my mic doesn't work maybe, but Megan, take over. Up to
Hi,
you.
everyone. I'm Jean Judson. How are you? Welcome to Ladder Daily Digest.
And I'm not.
Jean is at a Christmas party, if you can't tell. And so we were trying to wait until Mormonish finished up before we went live, but here we are. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. We've got the legendary Tim and Rob joining us this evening, and we're going to have an amazing show.
No, you're joining me this evening.
Oh, that's right. We're joining Tim. That's right. That's right. I forget. Whose channel is this anyway?
I don't know.
Well, I don't know if the rest of you beautiful humans have seen the news in the Mormon world. I know a lot of people on my channel don't follow Mormonism as closely as maybe some of the other people do. But there was quite a kerfuffle this weekend when it was discovered that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints changed the introduction to the Book of Mormon on the Book of Mormon app. And it was only for the app. And the app is, for those of you who don't know, it used to be that missionaries would hand out paper copies of the Book of Mormon to anyone who was interested in knowing more about the church. And now they have a fancy new app. And back in October, they very quietly changed the introduction to the Book of Mormon to make it, shall we say, more palatable to mainstream Christianity. At least that's my take on it. And we'll dig a little bit into it. But a couple of ex-Mormon creators, Rebecca Biblioteca and Analyzing Mormonism, and several other people posted all over social media about this change. And there was an article in LDS Living that confirmed that this change had been made. And then when John Dehlin of Mormon Stories put up their thumbnail that they were going to cover this story, all of a sudden the LDS Living article went away and the Book of Mormon app went back to its original version. It's very odd, strange how that happens. Now, we know that there is such a thing as a Strengthening the Church Members Committee, which does keep tabs pretty closely on the most prominent ex-Mormon creators out there. They keep tabs on what's being said about the church outside of the church. And so there's some speculation that perhaps the church did a little backpedaling. Mormon Stories did a great interview or a great episode on it. Mormonish did a great episode on it. There have been lots of creators who have covered this already, so we don't want to beat a dead horse, but there are some interesting things that we want to point out. And I think, Tim, you are going to take the lead on this one. Is that right?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the 7 basic editions of the LDS. So I want to be clear about this. We're talking about the Utah Church. 7 editions of the Book of Mormon, the 1830, which was the Palmyra. The 1837 was the Kirtland edition that went to England. The 1840 was the Nauvoo edition, which also went to England. 1879 were Orson Pratt divided into chapters and verses, and there was in 1920, and then in 1981. Between that 1879 and 1981, the editions in England printed in Liverpool were frozen pretty much in that edition. And it wasn't until 1981 that all the English editions became homogenized. And there were even verses, I think there was a verse in one of the Alma chapters that was left out of all the editions of the Book of Mormon that they discovered when Farms was doing their critical text. Maybe that was added later on.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Farms was the what is now Fair Mormon, the apologetic arm of the church.
No. They're at the Maxwell Institute.
Oh, you're right. My bad.
Fair is something. That's okay. Fair is something else entirely. I know nothing about Fair except what I read on the internet.
They're not officially affiliated with the church, but they are funded by an organization that's funded by an organization that's funded by the church.
Yes. So in 1981, White White became pure, and what was before delightsome?
Yeah, so it was white and delightsome, and then the skin of whiteness was changed to pure.
Pure and
So,
delightsome. That's
yeah,
right.
so for those of you who aren't familiar, the original language in the original Book of Mormon talked about people's skin turning whiter as they became more righteous.
Yes.
And then they changed it to becoming more pure.
And then also at the same time at BYU, there was a professor, Dwayne Jeffries, who was a geneticist, and Dwayne and I would have conversations about DNA. And we wondered at the time if they're ever going to find any Kohen DNA in Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some people, I don't remember their names, who started a company in Utah to collect DNA, and they basically were trying to prove the Book of Mormon was true. And over the time I was at BYU, we kept hearing about them not finding what they were looking for.
That's weird. I wonder why they didn't find it.
And then in the 80s or 90s, there was a NOVA program about the Jews from Ethiopia who had more Kohen DNA in their DNA markers in their DNA than even the Jews in Israel. So they were a pure tribe of Israel. And that got us all going, wondering if they were going to find it. And then by the 2000s, what was it, 2005 or 6, where they took out from the introduction that they were descendants of the Lamanites, they took that out.
Yes. So the 1981 introduction said that the Lamanites, or sorry, that the American Indians are the descendants of the Lamanite people.
Lamanites.
Yeah.
And that was removed in what? 2000.
So in 2005-ish, they changed it to say that they're among the descendants of the Lamanite people. And now, as far as I know, it's gone completely. Isn't that right?
Yeah, with this latest introduction. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at. There, the RLDS church in the 80s and the 90s pretty much distanced themselves from the historicity of the Book of Mormon, and they don't even believe it's historical. As far as I know, it's not historical anymore. It's mythology.
Yes. And my understanding was that the RLDS was having concession crisis troubles and they were having financial troubles. And so they aligned themselves with the Community of Christ. But if I remember correctly, and I'm happy to be wrong about this, the Community of Christ asked them to stop talking about the historicity of the Book of Mormon, and they just used it as a powerful teaching tool, from what I understand, and I could be wrong about that.
Okay, I don't know. I can't speak to that. So here we are with nothing in print. It's all digital now.
Mm-hmm.
So this introduction was digital.
Right.
And when Julia did her a little bit and Nemo did his, and when John did his on Monday morning, from Sunday, I think even when Nemo did it Sunday, it was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so by Monday morning, back to the old introduction.
Right.
So we wonder what's going to happen next.
Yeah, so I think it's important to note how many changes there have been over the years, and not just, I mean, we could probably have a couple of hours on all the different changes that have happened since Brigham Young took over the church. But most notably, there have been several different editions of the Book of Mormon. They weren't really codified, or I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Correlated until 1981, right? And then They had gotten rid of all the grammatical errors, all of the sort of folksy language that was in some of the different editions. They had sort of streamlined it so that there were chapter headings and verses and all of those things to make it more cohesive and easier to read. And there were several different covers of the paperback Book of Mormon.
Oh yeah, you had the blue one,
mhm.
and you had the characters cover, which was gold, which sells for several $100s sometimes on
Yeah.
eBay, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And then you had the hardbound editions.
I wish that I had saved my golden one.
Yeah.
Because that would have been worth a lot of money. But I can share my screen because I always like to give people
Okay.
a visual of what we're talking about here. And I like people to be able to see how different everything is. It's so weird. So this is just, if you just Google covers of the Book of Mormon and click on images, these are all the ones that come up. But this one with the angel Moroni is the one I remember from my very younger youth. And then let's see if they have the gold one on here anywhere. They have so many iterations of them, and they started Deseret Books started publishing a bunch of them that were more like journals where they had margin in the side. This is an example of one of those. It's got a pretty cover.
Can't see them.
Oh, you can't. Hang on one second. No. Oh, that's what I got to do. There we go.
There we go.
So that's the pretty one I was talking about. It's more like a journal. It's got margin in the side and everything. This is the one I remember from being a kid. It was this one. And then I was looking to see if there was the gold one. Oh, here it is. Perfect. I had a couple of these when I was younger, but it was so dog-eared and beat up that wouldn't have been worth anything.
Mm-hmm.
But all these different iterations. This is one of the original ones. There's that famous gold one again. And you can see they tried to put some of those Egyptian quote unquote hieroglyphs on there, which we know are all fake now. But the missionaries used to hand out, this version. This is the one you saw in the musical, right? The most famous version. But now, instead of handing out these paperback Books of Mormon, they are just having people download the Book of Mormon app, which I have some thoughts about that. What are your thoughts on that, you guys?
The app that they give to the investigators is different from the member app also. There's a difference.
Yep.
I don't think it contains the DNC and the Pearl of Great Price. I think it's just the Book of Mormon.
Just the Book of Mormon, that's right.
Yeah. I think that now that printing guru Thomas Monson is out of the way, I think the church is loving this move to digital, not only for the money-saving aspect, but for the ability to swap things out and just keep updating the narrative, and maybe nobody will know.
Yeah, they were very surreptitious about this, as they were with the publishing of the gospel topic essays. There was no announcement from the pulpit like, hey, brothers and sisters, now if you have questions about the book of Abraham, we've got a gospel topic essay for that. It was not announced anywhere. It just sort of showed up. And I think it's kind of the same with this.
I made a TikTok video I wish we could cut and just watch it for fun, but I pretended that I was a technology specialist working in the church's history department. I talked about how, I go in, I check my email, and I check the servers, and then, oh, wait a minute, here's an email. Looks like they want me to delete David Archuleta's concerts from the Tabernacle Choir's website now that he's gay and out. And then I do that. And then, looks like they want me to delete the Tim Ballard articles from the website. No problem. Ding. And then I say, looks like they want me to delete Elder Packer's Little Factories talk. Ding. And you can see, and I show how it is absolutely gone, missing off the website. And I talk about how I'm just so thankful for technology and how easy it is and how it would have been really hard to do my job in the olden days when you had to, burn down a printing press or, rip pages out of a journal or bury something in the dirt like 50 minutes, It's a lot easier now, this digital world.
That's right. Now you can just wipe it from the internet.
That's right.
So, yeah, I guess my theory about having a Book of Mormon app that is geared specifically towards people who are investigating the church or people who are not members is that you can feed information to that app that's not going to be seen by the general population of the church. I don't know if anybody else had a similar thought.
That's probably it. I also think that if they do print it in print, that it'll all be a way to judge faithfulness of members, how many go and buy it. Because I think in 81 when they did it, that was probably an indication of faithfulness if you're going to go buy a new edition of the scriptures.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the case. I have
I remember walking into Deseret Book and they had a whole palette of the triples. And the first one I bought was damaged. Pages in it were screwed up. So I went back and traded it. But by the time I went back, which was only a couple hours later, it was like half of it was gone. That was in Provo. So
yeah, interesting. So I had an interesting experience too. Elder Bednar came to visit San Antonio back around 2011, I want to say. And he gave a very specific talk, which I think he was sort of beta testing in the regional areas. And then later it became a conference talk where he talked about the phrase "in the strength of the Lord" in the Book of Mormon. And he specifically talked about the time when Nephi was tied up on the boat, and he prayed to God to free him from these bonds. But then he was able to sort of like wiggle the bonds. And then it says in the Book of Mormon, "In the strength of the Lord, I was able to free myself from these bonds." So Elder Bednar encouraged us to buy a new copy of the Book of Mormon, a paperback copy, and to go through and highlight all of the places where it said "in the strength of the Lord." And I was a very dutiful automaton at the time. And so I did. Actually, they were giving some copies out like at that actual meeting. And some they were asking, for a $5 donation or a $10 donation because they wanted to buy more Books of Mormon for the missionaries to hand out. But I suspicion that they actually had a surplus of paperback copies that they were trying to get rid of, and that they were trying to pass it off on the members to actually reimburse the church for the already printed copies, and come up with this surreptitious idea of like, oh, we're going to have you study things in a new way now. I don't know if anybody else had an experience like that or caught a hold of that, but I just now when I go back and I look at my Mormon years and I think about all the things that I did that were foisted on me by the brethren, some of it I think of, I look back and I'm like, man, that was really manipulative.
Yes. Definitely.
It's like I go back and look at that stuff with new eyes now, and I see manipulation and control everywhere. And maybe that's stretching. Maybe I'm overstepping, but I tend to not, at this point in my life, want to give the corporation the benefit of the doubt.
Never, ever. No.
My experience in the church is that each time something comes down from corporate, do a social media fast, create an I'm a Mormon profile, don't refer to yourself as a Mormon. There's always so much more to the story that they will not tell us. And it'll be a decade after the fact when we finally get the whole story.
Yep. And what I learned, and this is what's so interesting is that, of course, I was raised Mormon. I was in the church for, the first 40 years of my life. I was a faithful, believing member. I never looked at a single thing on the internet, nothing anti-Mormon, nothing like that. And about 5 years ago, I got a job in the oil and gas industry. And part of my job was to detect fraud. And in developing processes to detect fraud, I started coming up with, all of these different ways. And it was almost always just follow the money. If you can figure out how they're trying to get money out of you without actually supplying you any product, it's really easy to figure out what they're doing. And once the light bulb went off and I could apply that to the church, it's like, if you always just look at what's happening financially with the church, if you look at what their financial priorities are, if you look at them as a corporation primarily and as a church secondarily or tertiarily, really, because I think it's, first of all, it's motivated by power. It's motivated by perpetuating the system so the people in power can stay in power. And then secondarily, I think money. And although it could be argued, those could be, one and the same. But I now, when I look at the corporation of the church, if I think about this introduction change and I say, okay, how are they trying to make money off of this? Or what's the financial motivation behind this? And I think it's this we can see this pattern over the last several years of the LDS Church trying to make itself more palatable to mainstream Christianity.
Yeah,
And
look
there
at
have been
what it's
several markers
jettisoned.
along the way.
Yeah, it's jettisoned over the years. Adam God,
Mm-hmm.
plural marriage.
Yep.
It's like, what would Jesus as a corporation do?
What would Jesus' corporation do?
Corporate
I don't
Jesus.
think Jesus. I don't think he would jettison anything. I'd say, suck it up.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I find so disturbing is that the Mormonism of my youth was unapologetically peculiar. In
Well,
fact, I remember Gordon B. Hinckley giving that talk, right? And over the years, as I've gotten older, it's become more and more apologetically mainstream Christian.
when I grew up in the church, it was like a family. We were all like a big family. And in the 80s and 90s, it slowly became more and more corporate in the way it treated its members. And
Yep.
now they've done away with anything socially. There's no more road shows, no more pageants. I don't know if they still do Hilkamora. I don't know how Young Men and Young Women's is anymore.
There just are fewer and fewer social activities. It used to be every holiday, every anniversary of the church, Pioneer Day,
Ward
founding
dinners.
of the church day, ward dinners once a month, break the fast, all of that stuff. It just is, it's gotten less and less social over the years. And they say that's because, we're trying to make it more that you're teaching the gospel in your home. But I think honestly, that's also financially motivated because you've got a lot of social activities going on that have to be paid for, and, cleaning of the church and all of that kind of stuff that they're passing off now on the members instead of hiring people to do it, even though they have plenty of money.
And who's going to do it at home?
And it'd be one thing
really,
if the peculiarity of the church was just the members doing really well and doing good in society instead of having peculiar beliefs, right? Or peculiar, like not smoking or drinking or something like that.
Yeah.
But that would be the best peculiar thing, would be to be outstanding citizens.
Right, like not worrying about how high your temple steeple is.
Or even just, even just having Utah and Idaho and Arizona be the place where people's satisfaction of life was the highest, or where their mental health was the best, or where the schools were the best, or where we produced the most intelligent children, or, things like that, just markers. The things that I keep coming back to are like, if there really was a prophet on the earth today telling us exactly what Jesus wanted us to do and how to avoid pitfalls, then Mormons would all be the happiest, healthiest, wealthiest, most prosperous people.
And the nickname for Prozac is Sandy Candy.
Yep.
Yeah. And more Prozac is prescribed in Utah than anywhere else pretty much in the world.
Yeah. And not that there's anything wrong with taking prescription drugs for your mental health if you need it, but shouldn't the prevalence of mental health issues be lower in a community that is faithful, in a community that has the real 100% truth, in a community where the prophet claims to be able to see around corners for us and help us to avoid pitfalls? That's my question.
Yes.
We are leading the world in true crime and documentaries, though, lately, and movies.
That's true.
Yes, we are.
Unfortunately.
I'm enjoying
Utah seems to have become the unalive your spouse for insurance money capital of the world.
Eesh.
I'm sorry, Rob. It's just, it's a, statistical fact. Unfortunately.
And suicides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This change to the introduction of the Book of Mormon is
thanks for getting us back on track.
It is in keeping with the tradition where the church speaks out of both sides of their mouth. In Washington, D.C., during the Reed Smoot hearings, they'll say one thing, and then they'll come home to Salt Lake City and say exactly the opposite to members. They'll meet with Larry King and deny polygamy or deification, exaltation, and then they'll come back to the members and say, wow, you know what I really meant. We can't just, throw our pearls behind
before swine.
And so, telling investigators this is what the Book of Mormon is, which is very misleading. It is the furthest thing from informed consent, and then telling the members a totally different story. It's dishonest. And as evidence starts to mount against the church's truth claims, I believe they either have to become more dishonest to uphold the narrative, or they got to change the narrative.
Exactly.
And if you'll bear with me, I sent some slides. I don't know if we can bring those up, but if not, I can just speak to them. I'd like to make my case for why any changes to the Book of Mormon are deeply problematic. Is the Book of Mormon?
I'm trying to pull them up. Oh, you know what? I don't have access to them.
No worries. They were in the group discussion.
Yeah, I see them, but it says I don't. I mean, like this email address that I'm coming from doesn't have access. So I sent a request. I don't know if you have the ability to give me access to it or not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you know what? Let me just talk to him for the case of time. So we are talking about the very keystone of this religion. I don't know of any other religion out there that identifies what their keystone is. Well, with this religion, we know what it is. It is the Book of Mormon. And as Joseph Smith said, it is the most correct book on earth. Or is it the most corrected book on earth? The Saints Unscripted folks admit to 30 to 35,000 changes to the Book of Mormon. And they tell members, they're just grammatical spelling things. Don't worry about that. Let's look at that. Defense. First of all, how did Joseph Smith produce the Book of Mormon? In July of 1831, there was a gathering of elders. Hiram is speaking, and he doesn't feel like it's his place to explain the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. So he invites Joseph to come on up to the pulpit and explain it. And what does Joseph say? I love this. It was not intended to tell the world all the particulars of the coming forth of the book. It was not expedient for him to relate these things. Oh, nice one, Joe. Nice. But his scribes did explain how it went. And I'm getting this from the church's own website. Martin Harris says that sentences would appear on the seer stone. They would be read to the scribe. The scribe would write it. The scribe would read it back. And here comes a quote. If correctly written, the sentence would disappear. Another would take its place. But if not written correctly, it would remain until corrected. And he's not the only one that said that was the process. David Whitmer says the words would appear. If correct, then they would disappear. And another character with the interpretation would appear. So any changes to the text of the Book of Mormon throws shade at the power of God, which produced this most correct book. Now, in 1835, Joseph Smith starts doing something really interesting. He starts going back to his revelations from the D&C and altering them. He's deleting stuff. He's editing stuff. He's swapping out words. He's significantly changing the meaning of things. And actually what he's doing is he's evolving his doctrine. And so now he's got to get it to jive with the Book of Mormon. And here's one of my favorite ones. Look this up, folks. Alma 29, verse 4, in the original manuscript of the Book of Mormon says that God decrees which are unalterable. God's decrees are unalterable. But Joseph's now in the business of altering these decrees. So in the 1837 version of the Book of Mormon, he deletes that sentence. So God's unalterable decrees just got altered. Okay. That's Alma 29:4. Look it up at the Joseph Smith Papers.
Hey, look at that.
Oh, nice.
Hey.
Nice.
All right.
So maybe come forward like 4 or 5 slides.
Okay, let me just find it.
Oh, sweet. Nice work.
And I have to say, anybody's view of how Joseph Smith translated would have to come from Joseph. Nobody could observe that there were anything was written on a rock and that Joseph did exactly what it was. Everybody would have to rely on Joseph.
Right. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please, Megan. As Joseph also evolves from a Trinitarian or modalist view into a three separate beings in the Godhead, that's a problem for the Book of Mormon. So he'll go back and change 1 Nephi 11, and Mary will shift from being the mother of God to now she's the mother of the Son of God. And the Lamb of God will stop being the eternal Father and become the Son of the eternal Father. So this is 1 Nephi 11. These are doctrinal changes. Okay, next slide. During the 1837 printing of the Book of Mormon, Joseph also had to fix major errors, plot holes in the narrative. For example, in Mosiah, he had to swap the word Benjamin for the word Mosiah. Why? Because Benjamin was dead. He could not have been, interacting with Ammon. He's dead. It's Mosiah. So they had to fix that. Same thing in Ether chapter 4. All right, next slide. Okay. Oh, this is one of my favorite ones. In 2 Nephi 10, the writer says, hey, last night an angel told me that this coming Savior would be named Jesus Christ. This is the first time they've learned Christ's name. Except it's not, because if we go back to 1 Nephi chapter 12, it says that the eternal God and Jesus Christ, which is the Lamb of God. Well, wait a minute. So again, in the 1837 version, they have to go back, delete the word Jesus Christ from 1 Nephi, and put the word Messiah in, so we don't have a hole in the plot. Okay. Next slide. I just got two more examples I want to share. Oh, actually, just one more example. Okay. In modern times, to get away from racism, they have to go back and change the chapter headings, which I think it was Elder McConkie and Elder Packer created. And so now Lamanites are no longer receiving a skin of blackness, and they are no longer dark, filthy, and loathsome. How convenient, right? So I'm trying to make the argument that there can be no changes to the original Book of Mormon manuscript text, and yet they keep changing it. Why? Are they trying to get back to the original writing, God's prophets' original words? No. They're trying to adapt to their evolving theology. They're trying to get more politically correct, and they're trying to fix glaring errors, which are impossible because of the way the translation happened with the seer stone. Now, any comments? I got one more thing I want to say about this.
Yeah, this has always been one of those things that was on my shelf from the very beginning of my seminary education. The fact that what Joseph Smith originally wrote down was not the version that we were studying in seminary. And that always bothered me because I was thinking to myself, okay, if he's a prophet of God and he's translating this word for word, why did we take things out like that thing over there, that, over yonder and things like that, Why did that even exist in the first place if he really was a prophet of God? And the explanation that I kind of got half-heartedly from my seminary teacher at the time was, well, sometimes he's just a man. And sometimes our preconceived ideas, sometimes when you feel the Spirit, sometimes your own thoughts come in and distort what Heavenly Father's trying to tell you. And I was like, okay, I get that for me, but I'm not a prophet of God. So why did that happen with Joseph? I never got a good explanation about that. And I never got a good explanation about any of those kinds of questions that I was asking.
Because there is no good explanation.
There is no explanation, period.
Yeah.
The very first thing that went on my shelf, which eventually broke, was after Joseph Smith did the Book of Mormon project, his next project was to translate the Bible. And in doing so, there are verses in the Book of Mormon which are identical to the verses in the King James Bible. But when Joseph goes ahead and does the Joseph Smith translation, he corrects those Bible verses, making the most correct book, the Book of Mormon, now less correct.
Right.
Not just.
Is that how the power of God works? I don't get it.
It's mysterious, Rob.
But it's not just a Bible. It's an 1828 Finney Bible, which is different than the other King James Bibles.
Right.
The Finney Bible is the Bible he used for his translation. It's the same Bible he used for the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
And the final thing, if I had a shelf, I'd be putting this on the shelf. As we do Bible scholarship, as they find the Dead Sea Scrolls, as they examine the Great Isaiah Scroll, this is the perfect opportunity to vindicate our prophet Joseph, that he got it right. And in fact, that's the opposite of what's happening. These older texts, like the Great Isaiah Scroll, are showing that Joseph's version in the Book of Mormon is not even close. The Bible is much closer to the original text, and so these are changes that should be made to the Book of Mormon, but in fact are not. The changes that we see, whether it's the introduction or swapping out racist words, are, I think, part of just a larger agenda to retain people. And it just, to me, it shows an utter lack of disrespect for the word of God or the power of God that translated this, if they feel like they can just willy-nilly swap things out to fit their current narrative. Sad.
Yeah, and I would put forward that it's not to retain members, because they're bleeding members. People are leaving in droves. I think it's to attract new members who haven't been burned by the church already, because I don't think these
In
changes.
Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
Where
think
there's
these
no
changes
internet.
are gonna make anybody come back or want to stay when they have questions.
Members have got the sunk cost fallacy bias going. We'll just have to just have a nice bowl of cognitive dissonance, but it's the new ones that they're trying to get. So
yeah, and the people that I've talked to that are my age and older generation, it is that sunk cost fallacy of, like, I've spent my entire life in the church. There's no way that it can't be true. All these questions are coming up now that people weren't asking before. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to double down on my faith. I'm going to become even more active. I'm going to pray harder. And I'm just going to trust that God is going to work it all out after I die.
exactly. Place your bets.
Yeah.
Well, I already placed my bets and already lost my entire fortune. So I might as well sit here at the table with everybody else until the casino closes, right?
Right.
Nice.
Insanity.
Yeah. So I know I don't want to beat a dead horse or anything like that, but I do just want to touch on what the changes to the introduction were. We don't have to talk about all of it. I just wanted to say really quickly, because I just want people to understand that the original introduction to the Book of Mormon spoke very, very specifically about what the Book of Mormon is and what it isn't. It spoke very specifically about God's dealings with ancient inhabitants of the Americas. It spoke very specifically about gold plates, the record of the civilizations, one coming from Jerusalem in 600 BC, even though we know anthropologically there's no evidence for that. And not only that, but the claims that are made of the time frame, there's problems with the anachronisms and the historicity of it. It speaks very specifically about Jesus Christ coming to minister among the Nephites after his resurrection. It talks about Moroni, the hill Cumorah, the burying, the translating of the plates by Joseph Smith.
Urim and Thummim.
The Urim and Thummim, yes. It doesn't say anything about a rock and a hat. It doesn't say anything about spiritual eyes. It mentions the testimony of the 3 witnesses and the testimony of the 8 witnesses. It's very specific in its language. The new introduction, so it showed up as the introduction in the Book of Mormon app. Then it was taken down as the introduction. But if you go into the Book of Mormon app now, there's a place you can click. I'm going to pull it up because I did this earlier today. There's a place you can click that says, oh my gosh, it's asking me to share my testimony when I open it up. So I don't know if you can see this, but it says, what is the Book of Mormon? If you click on this right here, that's where the new introduction now appears. So this dumbed down language was in the introduction in the app, and now it's just in, you have to click on what is the Book of Mormon. And when you click on it, it speaks very generally about God being your heavenly Father. It speaks very generally about God speaking to prophets. It doesn't mention the Tower of Babel. It doesn't mention that these people came from Jerusalem in 600 BC. It doesn't mention the gold plates or the Urim and Thummim. It doesn't mention Joseph Smith at all. And it focuses very much on the individual finding God in the pages of the Book of Mormon and reading, and that God will reveal it to you in his own time.
Right.
He will
reveal the truth to you in his time and his way. Not that you'll get an answer right away when you read Moroni 10, 4 through 5, whatever, that he'll reveal in his own time. So you can be waiting forever for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is so interesting to sit back and watch the church send missionaries out to teach that, hey, it's the restoration. We're restoring back the original thing. And yet, whether it's Book of Mormon introduction, temple endowment, they're just trying to evolve as quickly as they can away from that original story.
Yeah, because they know that the original story has been debunked. It's been proven false. It's been proven problematic, and they can't answer the questions that are being asked of them. So rather than continue to try and double down on that original story, they're changing the story. And that's the other thing that's always been so confusing to me, even as a youth in the church, where they would say, God does not change. God's doctrine doesn't change. And yet I knew that things had changed since the origination of Joseph Smith's church. If you want to talk about Black people receiving the priesthood, or women exercising the priesthood, or the temple endowment, or the temple garment, and we could go on. But just in my lifetime too, I just made a quick little list over here of a few things. I remember them asking us as members to go on the I'm a Mormon website and write our testimonies and link it to our name and our location, so that people who knew me, for example, who knew that I lived in San Antonio, could go to the I'm a Mormon website. They could go to San Antonio. They could look up my testimony. They could see, oh, this is a person that I know from XYZ work or whatever. I can go and look up and see what her testimony is. Well, they spent millions and millions of dollars on that campaign and then just completely got rid of it because Russell M. Nelson had a little disagreement with Gordon B. Hinckley and wanted to be seen as, the better prophet.
Yeah.
So, just that whole removing of Mormon, the gospel topic essays, so many of the flip-flops of the general authorities, like teaching one thing in one conference and then 3 or 4 years later teaching something completely different. I believe that in 1978, God changed his mind about Black people. And my favorite part about that is that then there's a choir of Black people in the background going, Black people. Anyway, I believe that the reason Dallin Oaks gave a talk about temporary commandments in the last conference is because he's planning to dial something back very soon, something big. And it's going to happen in a few years. And when people complain about it, he's going to go, don't you remember? I gave a talk. I explained this all before. There were temporary commandments. And I'm thinking to myself, so written on a napkin instead of on a stone tablet, is that what temporary commandments are? Like just off the cuff?
Well,
like
polygamy was a temporary commandment.
For sure. Yep.
And so was the United Order.
Yep. Bacon-Abu. So there's just so many things. There's so many things on my list. We couldn't possibly go over all of them. But I think all of us have had experience with things that we believed and now are no longer taught as truth by the church.
Absolutely.
The polygamy is essential to salvation.
I had an experience just this week that helped me develop empathy for the brethren who are running this show. My wife and I met with her old college roommate, the lady that I was dating, who introduced me to my wife. And I'm so grateful that I was able to make the swap, but anyway, the point is, we hadn't seen her in like 26 years or something like this. And so we're having dinner with her and her husband. And I wanted to ask, hey, tell me our story the way you remember it. Our first date, being at the apartment together. And I did a secret admirer thing and all this stuff. And I nearly asked the question. And then I thought, no, I don't want her to correct the story that I've been telling for the last 10, 15 years. I like the way I tell it now. I'm off as a hero. It's funnier. I don't want to hear it. I don't want the truth. I don't want to go back to the original. I like the story I'm telling now. So I get it.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. I want to go and share. This is something that some people have said. I get lots of comments on my channel like, oh, that's a myth. That's not true. You can't say that that's true. It is the urban legend that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints changed their icons on Google Maps from Moroni's to crosses. And I just pulled up the Houston area, and guys, you can clearly see there are some Moroni's and there are some crosses, which means that somebody who is over whatever their location is, whoever the PR director is at this church over here, hasn't done it yet. Whoever the PR director is at this church over here hasn't done it yet. Oh, this is the temple, so maybe it's okay for the temple to be Moroni. But the rest of these ward buildings are crosses now instead of Moroni's.
So the person whose responsibility is to change it is the ward computer person?
I don't know that. I don't know that for sure, but I'm guessing that that's the reason why some are Moroni's and some are crosses, because I think it's whoever manages, because there's a website for each congregation, when you go to lds.org, and I think it's whoever the person is that's over social media or the internet stuff is the one who handles all of that stuff. So some of them haven't upgraded it yet.
Wow.
Or changed it or whatever you're supposed to say. But man, if I were the PR director over the Houston area, I'd be hunting these guys down and being like, what's wrong with you? We asked you to change this to a cross and it's still a Moroni. What's going on? What ward is this? Let's see. Let's see the reviews. Wouldn't it be interesting?
How did you do it?
You just go to maps.google.com and I just typed in Houston LDS Church because I didn't want to reveal my exact location.
Okay.
And so it gives me a view of the city. What do you want to bet that these people were asked by their ward leaders to leave a great review on the church? Wow, I simply love attending this local fellowship. The people are so friendly and welcoming. They are really amazing at following up with new visitors once they've attended a service. The worship experience is also wonderful. I'm getting baptized today and looking forward to living out my new covenant relationship with Jesus Christ. So if you're looking for a place to fellowship, stop in for a visit. God bless.
Nice.
So I wonder if they told them, now when you get baptized, it's a requirement. You must go on and leave a Google review. It must be a 5-star review. If it's not a 5-star review, you can't go to the temple. Oh, this one's only 3 stars. It's so interesting. I could probably look at this all day. This is a rabbit hole, you guys. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop. while I still can.
Well, I went in Google Earth for Bakersfield and it only doesn't show Moroni or a cross.
Did you put LDS Church?
Yeah.
I'm going to make a prediction, a prophecy rather. 10 years, either digitally on the website or in print, another book's introduction gets changed. The Book of Abraham. I think we will see that be reworded to where it's like Joseph had a revelation. This Egyptian stuff inspired him. I think that the facsimile pictures, they go away. That's my prediction. If I'm wrong, come on out. I'll buy you dinner. 10 years.
Okay.
I don't even know why
They
they
are
would
crosses.
continue to use the Book of Abraham since it's been so thoroughly debunked. Why would they
But it's
continue
part,
to include that in
it's part of the
canonical
temple
scripture?
endowment. It's part of the
That's
temple
true.
endowment.
Well,
did
we can't
change it to
change that.
Oh yeah, really?
Bow your head and say
Really?
yes.
No. No.
I did a TikTok video where I'm standing out in front of an LDS church and I say, you know, this church looks pretty good. You know, I mean, what's not to like about their choir or their beautiful, handsome looking missionaries or their university, you know, and then I say, the narrative is that they keep adding beautiful things to the church. You know, it's an ongoing restoration, but that's not the full story. And then I walk behind the chapel to the dumpster and I say, periodically, part of the secret of making the church as good as it is they have to take inspired revelations, doctrines, teachings that came from Jesus, and I'm holding all these boxes and throw them in the trash. You know, the law of adoption, garbage. You know, the presiding patriarch of the church calling trash. You know, and so yeah, I think the old introduction to the Book of Mormon, it's just headed towards the dumpster, and someday it'll be gone.
Yeah, I agree with you. Have you guys played around with the LDS chatbot yet?
No.
Yes.
Thanks, Simon
Yes.
Dave, by the way. Rob should just buy us all dinner. It's fun to play around with the LDS chatbot. It is sponsored by Mormonar, which is shoot, I forget the name of the dude now. I feel terrible. It's back in the recesses of my mind already. But he's a fairly famous Mormon apologist. But he seems to be pretty balanced with most of the information that he puts out on Mormonar. There are a couple of places I found problematic, but for the most part, it seems like he's being fairly transparent with what's widely known and what's been widely proved. So the LDS chatbot, if you go and play with it, it is programmed to answer from a faithful perspective. But if you ask it certain questions, it really won't be able to answer because, you know, it's a bot. It can't believe in things. And so Nemo the Mormon did an episode where he played around with it and got it to basically say that he couldn't claim that the bot couldn't claim that it had faith or that it believed the church was true. But I found it really interesting. Some of the things that I went and talked to it about were what Mormons believe about what's going to happen to other people after they die. And specifically, I wanted to ask about spirit prison. And I came at it from the perspective that, like, I'm not a former member, but my friend's a member, right? And so I specifically asked it, why is it that Mormons believe that non-believers go to spirit prison after the earth, after they die? And, it gives me an apologetic answer about spirit prison, spirit paradise. But it basically says it's not a place of judgment, but just a place of holding, sort of a holding room. I can't remember the exact wording that it said. I said, if it's not a place of punishment, then why is it called prison? And he says, oh, I know it might sound kind of ominous, but it's not a punishment. It's more about the state of being separated from God. So it has like these very smarmy sort of answers to give you, but it's kind of fun to play with.
Nice. Very nice.
I'm playing with it right now.
You're not supposed to tell everyone, Tim.
Oh, sorry.
You're
just supposed to tell your bishop, okay?
That's right. Tell your bishop when you're finished. See what he has to say. I have this theory, and I would love to bounce it off of you guys, because I sometimes feel like I get into a little bit of an echo chamber, and I'm afraid that sometimes I confirm my own bias, and I don't ever want to be in that space. So I'd love to have your feedback on this idea of the watering down or the dumbing down of Mormonism to be more palatable to modern day Christianity. And I think that some of it has come with this, like the Google Maps change was one of it. I think the introduction of the Book of Mormon is another one. You know, I don't know. I have this wild theory about the whole Tim Ballard situation where he was very publicly excommunicated, and then he was very publicly seen to be rubbing shoulders with the higher ups in the Catholic Church. And I don't know if you guys know about the sort of secret whiteboard meeting where he invoked M.
Yes.
Russell Ballard, that there seemed to be this sort of plot to get Tim Ballard in front of more people, but not in a Mormon way, and to sort of like say that these aren't Mormon beliefs, but to try to sort of infiltrate other faiths and say, like, this isn't a Mormon belief, but this is a Christian belief. I don't know what you guys think about that.
The whiteboard meeting was to get him to be prophet.
Right, prophet and president of the U.S.
Yeah, of the church. Yeah, after the church and president of the United States.
Yeah. So, but what came out of that whiteboard meeting was basically that we're trying to get Tim Ballard, you know, to have a public presence that's not necessarily affiliated with the church, so that people will like him as a figure who's fighting human trafficking, so that other Christians will love him as a figurehead, and then we'll get him installed as prophet, and then we'll get him installed as president of the United States so that he can sort of impose Mormonism on the country. I know that's a wild theory. It's full of lots of conjecture and craziness, but there seems to be a thread of something true in there.
Well, I think that you're right, and that was their plan, but I think it's been deep sixed. I think he got his second anointing. I think Ballard gave him a second anointing.
He did. I think there's good evidence to suggest that he did.
But his wife's divorcing him, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think she's divorced. If I remember, I could be wrong. Kara knows more than any of us.
Yeah. I haven't kept up with all of her stuff lately, unfortunately. She does great work, by the way. I love Kara Burrell. I love what she's doing on the Timmy Said What series that she does. She does so many wonderful deep dives. She's very, very smart. I don't want to at all dismiss her content as something you shouldn't consume or that I just don't have time for. It's just because of everything that I'm doing, I can only consume snippets of things here and there. And sometimes her stuff falls to the bottom of the stack of the things I have priority on. So please don't in fact, this is my endorsement. Please go watch Kara Burrell. She has wonderful stuff.
Watch Kara Burrell.
Yeah.
Kara, that's a shout out for you.
I'll weigh in on the.
And now she's teaming with Alyssa Grenfell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sweet. From what I've studied and learned about this topic, I really think that a key component, and this relates to what you said earlier in the podcast today, is the money. I think Elder Ballard was the kind of guy who was always looking to how could he flip and twist and make a quick buck. And him and Renlund investing in this, that they thought they could make money on this docu-series. I think that was a big part of it. And maybe now that Ballard is gone and Renlund probably lost quite a bit of money on this. I wonder if that, if it might die, since it wasn't like a unanimous, all the brethren are in on this. I don't know. Maybe they were. They'll never tell. So
no, they will never tell. That's one thing we know for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're probably right that whenever Tim Ballard came out and started dropping Elder Ballard's name, that I think that kind of put a kibosh on some of it, because that's a little bit embarrassing to the other, 15, the other 14 leaders who are up there, to realize that somebody's being, that their name is being put out there. It's an embarrassment for the church to have been so exposed in that way. And so I think when Elder Ballard passed away, probably any plans that he had or agenda that he had probably went away as well.
This is a self-endorsement. Please go check out my TikTok channel. It's called President Please Help Me. I did a video where I am explaining that Eliza R. Snow taught, and she says she got this doctrine from Joseph Smith, that reincarnation is a real thing and people can come back for multiple probations.
Multiple mortal probations.
And as I'm speaking this, into the frame slides Tim Ballard. You know, the guy who has had immoral improprieties, financial improprieties, and he slides right up next to me, and I turn, because I've been talking about reincarnation, and I say, Joseph, is that you?
Funny.
I mean, if Joseph Smith did come back, I think that's a pretty close fit.
Yep, and the LDS apologists trying to constantly say throughout the Chad Daybell case that multiple mortal probations was never a part of the doctrine, and that's something that Chad just sort of pulled out of nowhere. Sorry, it's just not true.
It's in the times and seasons.
Yep.
So it's something that Joseph Smith did teach.
Yeah. Well,
Tim Ballard will be something to think about and watch as it progresses, as he gains more and more notoriety in the press through his lawsuits and through his connections with Christians, whatever the heck he's going to do. I don't keep track of him.
It's a lot to dig into, because there's so many lawsuits and there's so many iterations of the things that he's done. He started out with one series that wasn't successful. Then he had another series that was semi-successful. Then he had this movie that was sort of successful, but then it came out that a lot of it was fabricated. It was supposed to be based on a true story, but it turns out it was based on a vision from a psychic, kind of thing. There's so much to dig into there. It's so complicated, and he's got so many connections to other prominent Mormons and politicians.
Everything about Tim Ballard is a fabrication. None of it is real.
Yeah.
The OUR was all BS, and I mean, when you go on OUR and start talking bad about Tim, you get attacked.
Yeah.
Just nuts.
Yeah. So just to kind of wrap up, what we originally started talking about was just changes to the church, changes to the doctrine, changes to the scriptures, changes to the Book of Mormon specifically. Last thoughts, Tim, and then Rob, and then Genius.
Well, I have a ticket to Thrive in February, and autographs will be $5.
I'll give you $10 for an autograph. How's that?
No, I think we're going to see more of this. The more digital it becomes and the less in print. Because the way they're going in Africa, they're going to have to make a lot of changes and a lot more concessions than they already are.
Mm-hmm.
And when they stop giving Nelson whatever they're giving him to keep him going, and he dies and Oaks takes over, it'll be really interesting. What changes Oaks brings.
I think we're going to see a lot more austerity from President Oaks when he takes over, and I'm not really looking forward to it. I think the church is going to become even less of a kind and loving place.
More and more people will leave.
Yeah.
And the Desnats and the crazy conservatives will stay.
Yep.
And those who are more nuanced will be gone. And it will just become a real estate holding with empty buildings and big, huge temples with nobody in them.
Yeah.
Like Scientology is right now.
Yep. All right, Rob.
I had fun, and I am thankful for the invitation. I love an opportunity to shine a big old flashlight on crap in the Joseph Smith papers. And at the same time, I feel so much love and compassion for my friends and family who are in the church, who are having to adapt while the general authorities are rearranging the deck chairs and causing people to double up on callings as they close stakes and combined wards. I just feel so much compassion for them. It must be hard, and I'm here to listen if anybody wants to talk.
Yeah. I feel that way too. I feel mostly grief and sadness. There's definitely anger in there about, being duped and wasting so much time and money in there. But I think mostly for me, it's grief that the church that I was taught existed didn't actually exist. I mean, wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be cool if Jesus Christ really did have a church on the earth today, and it really was led by somebody who was listening only to God and who wasn't
Yeah.
self-serving? And, great if the church had, so much wealth that they would use it for actual good causes instead of investments. It's sort of this illusion that I had in my head where I ignored all of the problematic parts because that's kind of what I was programmed to do. And the parts that I wished were true, even those turned out to be fake. And that's what I think I have the most grief about now.
Yeah, I think that's what we all mourn.
Yeah.
That it
Genius.
wasn't true.
Yes.
What do you
So
have to say?
I'm here. So I was thinking, just think if Jesus actually came back, appeared on CNN or something like that and said, hey, I'd like to go over a few things. In the Beatitudes, I said the meek and shall inherit the earth, but it's really the Republicans, right? And, I said, he who is without sin casts the first stone. You know what? Go ahead and just throw stones at everybody that you think is sinning. Those are the type of changes that some of the changes we see, right? Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah.
Do you throw the stone with the right hand or the left hand? Maybe Elder Oaks has a revelation on that.
You have to
Left
hold it
hand.
to the square,
Left
and
hand.
your
Depends if
right
you have the priesthood
knuckle
or
has
not.
to be over.
Us southpaws will throw it with our left hand, always.
So anyway,
But then it won't
thanks
be
everybody for
doctrinally
watching.
appropriate, and you'll have to throw it again.
I won't throw it again.
That's right. So thanks everybody for watching. Thanks, Megan, for doing the lion's share of the work.
Yes.
Thanks, Tim, for letting us into your living room. Thanks,
You're
Rob,
welcome.
for your
Now
presentation.
pick up your trash.
Pick up my trash on the way out.
Trash.
And I think I'm going to recycle some of it.
All right.
So
Tip your
anyhow,
waitresses.
All right.
everybody like and subscribe. Everybody that's in Latter Daily Digest, go subscribe to Megan's channel. And Megan,
Yeah.
you could say the same thing
Vice
for
versa.
your listeners.
Yes,
And Rob's
everybody go
TikTok.
subscribe to everyone. Go
get
find
yourself
everybody's
everyone.
TikTok.
the best
And-
holiday gift for free.
That's right.
That's right. For free.
That's right. So
And
we will
donate.
close this session without a prayer.
Thanks for being
No
here. Thanks for being
Sometimes I
here.
think we don't have one, right? Signing off. Thanks everyone for watching.
All right, good night.
Swaffel,
Lovely
Tom
people.
Schuzes von Sauergorken.